This is Other Perspectives. A major controversial issue facing Ann Arbor citizens is the possibility that the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority will be dissolved and all assets transferred to the new county-wide transit authority. Let's take a brief review of events leading to this possibility. Have the first visual, please. The Ann Arbor Transportation Authority, the AATA, was incorporated in 1968 under Act 55 to operate within the city boundaries. In April of 1973, Ann Arbor voters overwhelmingly approved a charter amendment to tax themselves 2.5 mills to support a better transportation system. This perpetual millage, coincidentally, 1973, was also the year a bus system between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti was funded. It jumped several decades to 2006, and Mayor Heafge introduces his model for mobility with key elements expanding the city's bus and train systems to take a regional approach. This vision includes commuter rail to Livingston County, the Wally, plus an east-west line. 3 years later, in 2009, the AATA adopts the county-wide mission. In June of 2011, the AATA board officially endorses the 30-year county-wide transit master plan to be implemented by becoming a new authority under Act 196. My guests will guide us on an exploration of the benefits, risks, and cautions of establishing the new county-wide transit authority. Larry Krieg is a planning commissioner for the Ypsilanti Township. His blog, Wake Up Washtenaw, encourages sustainable transit-oriented development. He is determined to do what he can to ensure reliable, efficient infrastructure in Washtenaw County. For decades, Vivian Armentrout has been involved in the Ann Arbor community through both appointment and election. From 1997 to 2004, she served on the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. For the past 3 years, her blog, Local in Ann Arbor, has been the source for knowledgeable, in-depth commentary on community issues. Welcome. So nice to have you here. I'm really pleased that you could make it. So before we get into the process of change, let's look at the possible reasons why this change to a county-wide plan is being strongly advocated by the AATA and the majority on council, just to name two. Do you want to start us off, Vivian?
I've been following the development of this rather closely since 2008, and I actually interviewed some of the originators of the concept. Terry Blackmore, the executive director of Watts, has been, I would say, working on, at least for a decade, working on the idea of improving accessibility to transit throughout Washtenaw County. Watts, of course, is the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study. Jeff Irwin, when he was the chair of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, also became very interested in it and was promoting it heavily. At the same, in fact, earlier he became very involved in the whole concept of a train from Detroit to Ann Arbor, and so his interest was both in the idea of the county-wide transit and also in the commuter train concept.
Do you want to add something to that?
Yes, one of the things that really got me onto the idea of trying to improve the countywide transit was my experience teaching at Washtenaw Community College. One of the things that I noticed before too long was that when a student's car failed, they failed more often than not, because there really were no alternatives to getting to class for many of them, and they really come from all over the county, and in many ways that is a microcosm at WCC of many of the problems that people face because of our extreme dependence on automobiles everywhere outside of the immediate Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti area.
So this new county-wide is supposed to implement the transit master plan. There's a 30-year transit master plan, and which was which is expected to cost $700 million. Can you give us just a few of the key items? There's also a 5-year plan. Can you give us just a few of the key items that would be implemented almost right away or long term? Some of the key items that go with this becoming county-wide. Do you want to?
Well, actually, the AATA has already begun implementing a county-wide plan. They have been moving to take over such things as van pools in the western part of the county. They've been extending express routes to Canton and Chelsea. They've extended increased service to the Ypsilanti area. So if I can back up a little, the Transit Master Plan, according to my analysis, is really 2 plans. And the bus transit plan is something that would create a greater urban network with extensions into the rest of the county. But then on top of that, or to its side, you might say, are 2 very ambitious commuter and connector rail plans. So it's kind of hard to talk about both of them at the same time because in a way they are not, in my opinion, particularly complementary.
And I think that we'll get to when we talk about the financial subgroup that wants really to take the rail out to we'll really focus on that. Do you want to add something, Larry, that what you see is kind of the target things that they're trying to do? As Vivian said, that's already been started.
Yeah, particularly the Route 4 between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti has been increased in frequency, and
just actually
on
yesterday.
Monday. Yesterday.
Yes, on the 30th. Yes.
So that was good. You may recall that Ypsilanti voted a transit millage for themselves.
Yes.
And so in a way, this is not just the Transit Master Plan, but also a response to that. The other aspects of what's going on really is incorporating the outer part of the county, or giving the townships the opportunity to pay for their own service in a much more regular way. The way it's working now is through the purchase of service agreements, which have to be...
Let me just pull up that.
Okay.
If you pull up the next slide, that would be good. It shows some differences. So then this really, as you pointed out, we've already started, the AATA has already started doing a lot of what they're talking about as future plans. So then the question becomes do we need to go to a 196, to an Act 196, to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished, in your opinion? Yes, Larry, you want to?
Yeah, the drawback with the current system is that it really involves yearly approval of the purchase of service agreements by the areas outside of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, which, number one, means that every shock in the budgets of these townships becomes a shock to Ann Arbor, because what ends up happening is that the service is continued, but Ann Arbor kind of picks up the tab.
Okay.
And this really gives the outer townships an opportunity to pay their own way in a more regular and plannable kind of a basis.
Okay. Do you want to?
Actually,
weigh in?
Ann Arbor has not always picked up the additional cost. It has attempted to stay with the POSA model, but that's had some very bad consequences. For example, Scioto Township for a while had a bus service along Jackson Avenue, And we heard a very poignant story at the public hearing in which the head of the Washington Housing Alliance talked about the mothers and infants from the Alpha House having to walk in the snow
Yes.
to get to services because the bus that had been there was no longer there. The reason was that Scioto Township decided to discontinue their POSA. This is the kind of thing
POSA, Purchase of Service Agreement.
Yes, which,
yes.
yes. And this is the kind of thing that makes many of us feel that and I am one of them, who feel that a regional or county, I don't know if county-wide is exactly the exact model, is needed. And I am a strong advocate of public mass transit. And like Larry, I know my husband also teaches at Washington Community College, and he has had exactly the same experience. Students who cannot get to
Right. class
class because their car broke down. Of course, the problem is how we implement that.
Definitely.
And who pays.
Okay. So let's go into a little bit of the process, okay? The process of going from a Act 55, which we are now with purchase of service agreements, and going to an Act 196 for countywide. Can you give us an overview? We know that the public transportation agreement, which is between the City of Ann Arbor, the City of Ypsilanti, the AATA, and Washtenaw County, needs to be implemented. And the City Council, Ann Arbor City Council, has spent the better part of the both January meetings discussing and amending and not coming to a final resolution. And Ypsilanti, I gather, has also not passed anything. So perhaps you can tell us something about this four-party agreement. What does it do and what does it not do? Some have said it's just a framework. Others say, no, this is a contract, a binding contract. So could you tell us just a little bit about that four-party agreement?
You're looking at me?
Well, either. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, why don't I
yes.
take a turn to go
Sure,
first?
Absolutely. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, my understanding of the four-party agreement is that before any specific legal entity is created as a countywide or region-wide authority, there has to be an agreement to proceed with it so that there is a way in which it can be done in an orderly way. I went through the four-party agreement in some detail, and I found that there are 15 steps at which approval needs to be gained, not counting approval of the four-party agreement itself, okay, before a countywide 196 entity could be formed.
Okay. Do you want to say something about the steps, or how difficult the steps are? Or?
Actually, the only reason that the four-party agreement is needed is that the model that was arrived at was to retain, it's what's called the layer cake model, to retain Ann Arbor's millage and apply that to the countywide authority. And also, I think somewhat belatedly, they came up with the idea of including Ypsilanti in that, because Ypsilanti also has a perpetual millage. If you look at what you might say the generic program for a 196 authority would be, they could simply ask the County Board of Commissioners to authorize them to form an authority, and then they would they would ask for money. They would probably put a millage on the ballot, because that's all that really works. The only reason we're going through all of these convoluted steps is that Ann Arbor voters would continue to pay the over 2 mills that we pay now, plus any additional millage. And so this really is a legal agreement which binds, with a lot of contingencies and a lot of steps, binds Ann Arbor to continue paying its millage into the system. Because if we had a clean, uncomplicated Act 196 authority, it wouldn't be necessary.